So now let's go back and visit that div with the ID of main, and let's take out that width property, and you will notice that it has gone ahead and gone to the width of that containing element, but that's because the content within it is broader than the space that's available. So if we wanted to come in here and make a little change, what I'm going to do on these boxes, I'm going to switch them from widths in pixels to, I'm going to go ahead and switch those to 25%. And I'm going to change them all to 25, or actually I'm going to change them to 20%. So that's box 2. I want to do the same thing for box 1, 3, and 4. So what have we got going on here? Why is it that we have this white space here and this blue space here? So let's take a look at it. Each of these boxes are 20% of the available space to that. So that only adds up to 80% of the space. The space available to it is in the parent div, which for all of those boxes is this main, this div with the ID of main. So they're sitting in this div with the ID of main, which has that background color of blue. And then there's this extra section over here. That is that other 20%. So that explains that we've got 100% there, but it's sitting over to this side. So if we go back up to what we've told this main to do, we've got that floating right. That's why that space is over here. And so if we change that to left, then we'll have the same circumstance where we're using up 80% of the space of the page. We've got this white left over. Now think about it. If we wanted to center this main div in the page, then what we would do is we would give it margin left set to auto and margin right set to auto. And when we refresh the view on that, the reason it doesn't work is we haven't set a width. So let's go ahead and go in, and we will set the width at 80%. And we want to go ahead and take off that float because you don't need that float when you're doing this. That brings it in the middle, but by taking that float off, you notice you also lost that 20%. Now let's go ahead and get rid of that extra space that's putting the extra white in here, that 20% that is there, because as you recall, we've got each of these is 20%. Let's go ahead and make those 25% so that they take up, between the 4 of them, they take up the full 100% space that is available. Now you could also do this by, you could add padding, borders, margins, all of those things. Actually, padding wouldn't make the boxes wider, but you could add margins and borders that would bring it further, further spread those things out. So when I refresh that, now we're back to the full width of the main box, which, as you recall, is 80% of the wrapper, which is the containing div. If we wanted to move this whole section up next to this header, how would we do that? We would do that by going into the header and adding a float. That would make space available, and that would slip up next to it. Now you'll notice that all 4 of those don't fit in there, and so it the main div floats up next to there, but since these are relative to their parent div, which is the main, they float around within there. So let's see what we could do with this the way that we're looking at it. So essentially what we've done by setting a float here on the header and a float on the main, well, the div of ID of main, we've essentially created a two-column floating layout, which is a very common approach to it. Now, we could do the same thing within this section. We could have added additional divs to have that so that you had your header at the top and then the divs. So let's go ahead and just quickly play with this. If I wanted to drop this down so that I had an even number of these boxes sitting within this div, then what I would be able to do, what would I apply? I would be looking at box 3 because I want box 3 to come down here. What would I add to that? So I'm coming to box 3. I want it to float, but I don't want it to go up past the other one, so what I would do is add a clear. Now, would I add a clear right or would I add a clear left? The other boxes are they're all set to float to the left, so they're going to be on the left side. If I clear left, then what that's going to do is it's going to pop that down below there, and now it drops even below this. So that tells me that this main div is actually coming up underneath that navigation or that header div where it is able to. And so you need to really play with and understand floats well in order to get them to do what you want them to do. So if I wanted all of this main not to float up there past the header, again, I would do the same thing. I would apply to the main, and I'm going to go ahead and do clear both just so that it clears everything. That drops it back down there below that header. But because this header has got a float applied to it, it shrinks down to only taking up that portion of the spot in the flow that actually is contained by that. So it goes to it narrows down to the size of the content that is actually in there.